Hi everybody, it's Rob here from Trinity Streetsville. Here at Trinity, we're just a group of ordinary people learning to follow Jesus in our own day. Today we're going to be talking about this phrase, just speak your truth. Why do people say that? And are there any problems that arise when we speak our truth in today's world? Well, today we're actually going to learn that Christian truth is different than any other truth. It's one that you can believe in and day out. So stick around and let's learn more about truth, specifically Christian truth. We are going to be carrying on a teaching series that we began called The Bible Doesn't Say That. Do you know we've been doing this for 8 weeks now? We have one more week to go. And what we've been doing is looking at some of those catchy, Band-Aid phrases that people always say that seem so comforting and seem so nice. Things like God helps those who help themselves, or just follow your heart, or this too shall pass. We say all these things. It sounds like they're from the Bible, but what we've learned, in fact, is that the Bible doesn't say that. And today we're going to talk about this phrase. It's one we've all heard, and maybe it's a phrase you yourself have spoken. And the phrase is this: speak your truth. Or sometimes it comes out as speak your own truth, or live your truth, or something like that. It's a very noble sounding statement. It sounds very sounds like something you might actually find in the Bible. But the truth is, the origin of this phrase isn't from the Bible, but I think it actually dates back to Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey, that's right. In 2018, during the Golden Globe Awards, Oprah Winfrey took to the stage and made a speech. Now, mind you, this was during the Me Too movement. And when she got up to the stage, she said, "What I know for sure is that speaking your truth is the most powerful tool we all have." Now, to be fair, Oprah was talking about women who had suffered abuse and were courageously stepping forward to tell their stories. And in that context, her words were actually very bold and meaningful and much needed. But that phrase, speak your truth, it didn't quite stay in that lane. And over time, speaking your truth actually became this cultural mantra that says that actually each of us gets to define what reality is, and that no one has the right to question what we feel is right and what we believe is true. So, for example, to speak your truth often implies that truth is a personal thing. It's not universal. And therefore, your lived experience cannot be challenged by another person, because it's your truth, and if it's true for you, who are you to challenge that truth? And therefore, even to disagree with someone about what they deem to be the truth is seen as disrespect, because it is so personal. That truth is so personally held by that person. So disagreement is almost off the table. When you hear people say it today, though, it may not come out just as someone saying, speak your truth. It may come out more like this, that's true for you, but it's not true for me. Or only you can decide what's right for you. Or don't impose your beliefs on others. Or who are you to say what is true for someone else? So what started out as this courageous call for honesty morphed into this really complex idea of what constitutes truth. On the one hand, there is something we might call absolute truth, right? Which is this idea that truth is objective, it's universal, it's exclusive to all people, all times, and in all places. On the other hand, there's this thing that's emerged, relative truth, which is to say that truth is actually shaped by your personal experience, by your culture, from your perspective. And in that view, what is true for you may not be true for me. Absolute truth says that this is what's real, whether I like it or not, and whether I believe it or not. But relative truth says this is what's real to me, based on how I feel, or based on how I see things. And the tension between these two ideas is everywhere. And if you are a Christian person, many of you are this morning, you will know this very well. Because into the middle of this debate, Jesus comes stepping in and he says stuff like this. He says, I am the way, I am the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Now we would say, Jesus, you can't say that. That is so exclusive. That is so offensive. But this is the kind of thing that Jesus said. He made these radical truth claims about himself. So in this world that says, speak your truth, Jesus comes along and says, I am the truth. And he doesn't just refer to himself as the truth. He actually also says that God's word is the truth. He says, make them holy, God. He prays this prayer by your truth. Oh, what's that truth? My truth, your truth? No, your word, which is truth. The Bible, the scriptures, Jesus referred to as the truth. Not a truth, not one truth among many truths, but the truth. And we might push back and say, Jesus, listen, that might be your truth, but it is not my truth. Or Jesus, that Bible, that might be meaningful to you, but it doesn't define what is true for everyone. This is really complicated stuff, right? And again, if you're a Christian, you need to wrestle with this topic, because the question is, how do we follow a Savior like Jesus, who makes very bold claims about what is true, in a culture that insists that no one's truth gets the final say? And even if you're not a follower of Jesus, you're not a Christian, we're glad you're here too. We're glad that you've tuned in as well. But it is also important for you to understand, this is what we're going to look at today, that when Jesus talks about truth, it is a very, very different kind of truth than any other truth claim that you will come across out there. And so that's what we're going to look at today. Today, we're going to look at that phrase, speak your truth, and we're just going to kind of build it around three statements. Why do people say this? Secondly, why is it problematic? And thirdly, why is Christian truth different than every other kind of truth? And I've given you some little teaching notes if you want to follow along today. Everyone who completes these notes will get a prize at the end of the service. You can decide whether that was a truth or a lie. Right? I'll let you figure that one out. So let's start with this one though. Why do people say to speak your own truth rather than participate, or why would they say that and say we ought to push back against any kind of totalizing truth that is out there? Well, there's actually some really valid reasons that we need to acknowledge, right? The first is this, that history has shown us many, many times that when people make truth claims, it's actually about power, right? Many times, truth and owning the truth and shouting the truth is used to oppress other people. If someone claims to have the truth, it might be that what they really want to do is silence you. What they really want to do is marginalize you. What they really want to do is control people. Too often, I think, when people say, this is true, what they're really trying to do is get control over you. And here's how that works. Because whoever gets to define truth gets to define reality. And whoever defines reality gets to shape what society looks like. So truth can become this tool of oppression. Remember, Galileo, for example, was condemned by the Roman Catholic Church because he thought that the earth went around the sun, right? And it contradicted the church's truth of the day. And so he was oppressed because of that. So even today, though, people see religious beliefs, therefore, as violent many times and oppressive. One modern thinker puts it this, it says, every claim to truth is a bid for power. It's not about what's real, it's about who gets to rule. It's like Natalie read in the book of Fabrications. Truth is but a weapon wielded by the powerful to subdue the weak. That's what many people say. And so they'd say that in order to keep people safe, in order to keep people free, and to make sure we're not oppressed, we all should instead speak our own truth. But the second reason why people say speak your own truth is because claiming to know the real truth, or there's some absolute truth, sounds very, very arrogant. In today's culture, saying, for example, I believe Christianity is true, is heard as saying, I think that Christians are smarter, or I think Christians are more enlightened, or I think that Christians are more moral or better than everyone else, right? If you claim that your view is right, then now it's about superiority. It must be because you think you're wiser or smarter than everyone else. And sometimes, let's be honest, that is exactly what we are doing when we want to win an argument and prove our truth. Tim Keller puts it this way: to say that one religion is true and others are false seems arrogant. Right? To many modern people, they believe that truth, especially religious truth, is a matter of perspective. Okay? So, thirdly, though, the third objection is that truth claims seem intolerant. I mean, tolerance used to mean that we could disagree about something and have a good argument about it and respect each other while we're doing. But today, tolerance means we have to affirm all views as equally valid. So if you say that someone is wrong, that's not just a disagreement. That is an attack on them. That is a personal judgment on them. It could even be perceived as hate against you, right? Because now you're questioning someone's belief, and their belief is so deeply held as personal that to reject their belief is to reject them, right? So D.A. Carlson, he wrote this book called The Intolerance of Tolerance, where he said that the new tolerance insists that all opinions are equally valid, and this leads to the strange conclusion that disagreeing with someone is inherently intolerant, no matter how graciously it's done. Identity and belief are so tightly connected that to challenge someone's belief is to challenge their identity. It's a personal attack. Take a look at the reading that Libby read for us this morning from John's Gospel, right? Jesus says to Pilate, "Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Now again, this is another one of Jesus's incredible truth claims about himself. And Pilate responds by saying, "What is truth?" You know, there's a few different ways you could read that statement, right? Did Pilate say, "What is truth?" and mean, oh, Jesus, this is very interesting. I'd like to hear more about your truth. What is this truth you're talking about? Or is Pilate reacting much the same way that our culture reacts by saying, okay, dismissive, suspicious, okay, Jesus, what is truth? Or, come on, what is truth? Pilate rejects Jesus' truth claim. He almost laughs at it. And so do many people today. Isn't it safer? Isn't it better, therefore, to speak your own truth? Well, not really. Speaking your truth sounds easy, sounds safe, but actually it is quite problematic for, I'm going to suggest, 3 reasons. First, to say, you speak your truth and I'll speak my truth sounds nice until your truth collides with and threatens my truth. So imagine 2 drivers and they're both approaching the intersection. One driver's truth is a yellow light means slow down. Another driver's truth is a yellow light means speed up. And there's a collision. Now, whose truth wins, right? Or let's say you work in an office and there's a shared kitchen. One person's truth is if it's in the fridge, we can share it. Another person's truth is if you touch my food, I'll kill you, right? Whose truth wins, right? Imagine 2 kids on the playground. You overhear them. They're grabbing the same soccer ball. One says, "Give it to me, it's mine." And the other says, "No, you gave it to me." Now, whose truth wins? Unfortunately, whose truth wins is usually the louder voice wins. The person with the stronger fists, that's whose truth wins. Or what often happens on the playground is somebody will say, "Actually, let's call the teacher. We need somebody higher, somebody smarter, somebody wiser to come in and determine which of these competing truth claims is actually the right truth, to arbitrate between these 2 truths." So you see, this is one of the problems with your truth, my truth. What happens when those truths come into conflict with each other? The second problem with having a personal truth is that your personal truth might actually be very dangerous for you and for others. It might run you aground in life. The reason I use that phrase is I was thinking how last summer our family went houseboating near Bobcaygeon. And it was beautiful, quiet waters, these beautiful bays and all that. And when we left the marina, we were given a GPS and we were given a big book of maps with all the depths, the water depths throughout these lakes. Because hidden underneath these peaceful waters are rocks everywhere, trust me, and big ones. And you can't see them. And if you're not careful, you will hit them, you will do damage, and if you bust that propeller, they charge you a lot of money. When we left the marina, they did not say to us, just follow your truth, just go with your gut, go wherever you want. It's really, everyone can choose their own way. No, they said, follow the chart, right? Trust the GPS. Stay in the channel, right? Being out of touch with what's really going on, with reality, doesn't make you free. It actually makes you vulnerable. And this is one of the biggest dangers of my truth thinking. It sounds empowering, but what if your truth is actually really misaligned with reality? What if you're heading for the rocks right now and you do not know? In your parenting, in your marriage, in your finances, in your spiritual life, right? My truth, it might feel right, but if it's not lined up with reality, it'll wreck you. And here's the third problem with saying, oh, just speak your truth. I find this one very interesting. If you say, no one has the whole truth, don't trust them, then I shouldn't trust you either. Because what you just said was a claim about something you think is true. You see, people who say there is no absolute truth, they just made an absolute statement about truth, right? You may have heard the story about the blind men all touching the different parts of the elephant. And one touches the trunk and says, oh, it's a snake. And the other touches the ear and says, oh, no, it's a leaf or something, and a fan. And one touches the leg and says, oh, it's a tree. And one touches the tail and says, it's a rope. Each man is convinced he has the truth. But of course, the parable goes, no one sees the whole picture. And the moral of the story is that there is not one religion or one person who has the full truth. All paths lead to the same God, which at first it sounds very humble. It sounds very, very humble. But when you think about it, it's actually incredibly arrogant. Because the storyteller themselves is claiming to have the truth that nobody else seems to have, right? Who knows it's actually a whole elephant? Oh, the person telling the story says, I know better than all these people, right? The parable collapses under its own weight because the claim that no one sees the whole truth is itself a claim about truth. So you see, even when we speak our truth, there's problems. There's problems. Our truths collide with other people's problems, our other people's truths. If our truth is out of touch with reality, we're going to get hurt. And even our belief that no one has the whole truth is a radically arrogant statement that claims you know better than everybody else. So the whole thing seems really, really hopeless. But what if there was a higher truth out there? What if there was a truth greater than your truth, greater than my truth, a truth that could really steer us through life and avoid the rocks and the pitfalls? But what if it was a different kind of truth? What if it was a truth that didn't oppress us? Right? What if it was a truth that wasn't arrogant? And what if it was a truth that wasn't intolerant, but actually made room for everybody, right? Well, guys, that is exactly what Christian truth is. It is a truth claim that is different from every other truth claim out there. Yes, it is true that Jesus says, I am the way and I am the truth and no one comes to the Father through me. And that sounds like arrogance and it sounds like a power grab and it sounds like all our cultural fears of intolerance and all that stuff. But the content of the truth that Jesus is talking about, it overturns every one of those objections. Let me show you. First, Christian truth does not oppress people. It actually liberates us from oppression. Because Christianity is not about gaining power. It's about losing power. You know, Jesus once said that the rulers of this world, yes, they lord power over each other, but not so with you. Whoever wants to be first among you must be a servant. You see, so power in Christianity, it doesn't look like conquest. It looks like a cross, right? Every other truth is trying to seize power and win, right? Jesus says, no, lay down power, right? True victory comes through surrender. True victory comes through love, through self-sacrifice. Let's go back again to this reading that we heard this morning. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. Gosh, when you yell that, it sounds like an oppressive power grab. But wait, what happens right after this? Jesus tells us that he's the truth, but then immediately he is beaten and he is mocked and he is crucified and he is killed and he is buried. Why? Because Christian truth did not come to dominate you. It came to die for you. The Christian confession of Jesus as the unique Lord does not lead to domination, but to servanthood. You cannot compel anyone to believe because at the heart of our faith is the one who was crucified. And God forgive the church when we get this wrong, when we turn Jesus into some way to oppress and control others. But you do not need to be afraid of Jesus' very radical truth claim, because it is not just another power play that's trying to silence you or beat you down. Jesus himself was silenced. Jesus himself was beaten down for you. That is a very different truth. And you can submit to that truth without worrying about oppression. Secondly, that means believing Christian truth doesn't make us arrogant know-it-alls that look down on people and think we're better than others. It actually should prevent that very thing from happening, because the real truth of Christianity, if you actually understand it, is that it's only by grace that you are saved. You were so lost and your life was so screwed up that the only way you had a hope of being saved was for the Son of God to die for you. That's how bad things were. So any attempt to be arrogant, that goes down the toilet. You know better. You have no bragging rights whatsoever. You can't look down on anyone. John Stott says the truth of the gospel is not a weapon for domination, but it's a mirror to humble us. Its effect is not to inflate our egos. It actually deflates them. So I'll say it again. Is Christianity exclusive? Yes. Is it arrogant? Impossible. The cross leaves no room for us to feel superior. It announces that we were so lost that Jesus had to die for us, and so loved that he was willing to die for us. And finally, not only does Christian truth liberate us from oppression and prevent us from arrogance, but it also leaves no room for intolerance. You see, the problem with so many truth claims is it says it's an us-them. It's me versus you. It's my truth versus your truth. You're either in or you're out. But on the cross, Jesus made no such distinctions. He was willing to die for the people who loved him and the people who hated him. He died for the people who believed in him and the people who did not believe in him. For people who were his friends gathered around the cross and the people who were his enemies crucifying him on the cross. God demonstrates his love for us in this, that while we were all still sinners, Christ died for us. He actually prayed for his enemies as they crucified him, which means this: the exclusive truth of Christianity is an inclusive invitation for everyone. No one is beyond the reach of his grace. The door is flung wide open to everyone who calls on his name. And maybe that's what you need to hear today, because you are certain you don't belong. You're not holy enough. You're not churchy enough. Your questions are too big. Maybe the church even made you feel there was no room for you at some point. But the truth is, Jesus does not exclude you. He embraces you. He doesn't shame you. He restores you. He doesn't shut you out. He welcomes you in, because Christian truth is not a doctrine. It's a person. And it's a person who died for each and every one of us to bring us all back home. So it is true. It is true, Christianity makes us very exclusive, absolute, and universal truth claim. I am not denying that, and none of us should. But don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of the T word. Don't be afraid of that truth, because unlike every other truth, Christian truth, it overturns the oppression with self-giving. It replaces arrogance with humility. And it transforms intolerance and exclusion with a radical welcome. No, Christianity is not a straitjacket. Christianity is the truth that sets you free. So don't settle for your truth, my truth, someone's truth. Embrace God's truth. Let Jesus' truth steer your houseboat through the waters of life. And remember, his truth is strong enough to guide you, gentle enough to heal you, and deep enough to carry you through anything. Thanks be to God.